Welcome to this week's edition of Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Chi-Chen Lo. Taiwan has been through the longest 39-year martial law rule in the world. As a result of democratization and liberalization, the human rights situation in Taiwan has been improving. Still, there are many problems. So what are the things that we can do to improve our human rights record? And this is a topic we're hoping to discuss today. In today's program, we are very delighted to invite Rebecca Fan, Director of International Affairs of Taiwan Association for Human Rights, to share with us their views and their tasks and campaigns. Ms. Huang, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
So tell us more about Taiwan Association for Human Rights.
We usually call Taiwan Association for Human Rights as TAHR for the initial. And it was founded in 1984. It is still to this day one of the oldest independent NGO for human rights in Taiwan. And as if you are familiar with Taiwan's history during that era, it is before the martial law was lifted in 1987.
That's right.
Because we were founded in 1984. And given that backdrop, you can imagine the difficulties and the challenge for such organization to operate. Therefore, if you look at the development, the organizational development of the TAHR, you can see that the first 10 years, we are pretty much existing as an underground organization. There are many reasons, and one of that is the legal backdrop and the political climate, as you can imagine.
So who were the key members of the TAHR?
Well, at the early stages, as I mentioned before, that was the martial law era. So a lot of the focus of our work is focusing on releasing political prisoners and other civil and political rights campaign. So a lot of the members or the initial founding members of our organization are the so-called 党外, or the members who
outside the KMT, you know?
Outside the KMT regime, correct. So you will see a lot of the members or our board members, founders, they're mostly the 党外 activists who advocate for civil and political rights. So we campaign for prisoners who are under the threat of extrajudicial executions or who are political prisoners under KMT.
Yeah. So what are the mandates of the Taiwan Association for Human Rights, TAHR?
Yes. If you look at the mandates, well, first you have to look at the development of TAHR. I mean, it's the oldest NGOs for human rights. It's been established for over 20-some years now. And it has gone through different stages. Mainly you can look at it from 3 different stages. And that history very much reflects the human rights movement and democratization movement in Taiwan. The first stages, you can pretty much look at it from 1984 to 1995, the first 10 years, which, as I mentioned earlier, is focusing on political and civil rights. And then from 1995 on, that's the post-martial law era. That means that there are more, well, not to say that during the martial law era there weren't a lot of individual activists fighting for human rights, but in the organizational type of way, or in terms of institutionalization of human rights campaign, you can say that started with TAHR. So through 10 years, a lot of the human rights standards in accordance with international human rights mechanisms or international covenants such as Universal Declaration for Human Rights, those concepts and those principles gradually were known to the general public in Taiwan. That is because of the members of our organization has been conducting seminars, human rights education workshop, and telling people all those informations. Because if you remember the peculiar situation of Taiwan, isolated from involuntary isolation from the international community, especially after 1971, withdrawal from UN membership, we are very much withdrawal from the core development of human rights system.
Yeah.
So in terms of information or knowledge about the human rights development, we are very much isolated from that.
Yeah.
So to do human rights work is pretty difficult. Just from getting information could be quite a task at that
So
stage.
what are the key activities do you engage yourselves in? You organize street demonstration or organizing seminars
Well,
and so on?
at the first 10 years, most of our work is by public speech, seminar, and writing, publishing, and that sort. And the post-martial law era, that would be roughly 1995 to 2004. The second stage, there are a lot of changes in the Taiwanese society, and the development of civil society has progressed. For example, in 1995, well, the formal establishment of the Judicial Reform Foundation was actually in 1997. That was also established through this group of activists for human rights. But because at the first stage, like I mentioned, we are seeking political and civil rights. But the second stage is, of course, you have to understand human rights is so broad.
That's right.
And political civil rights is not adequate to cover all the grounds concerning human well-being. So our task has broadened during the post-martial law era. For example, you have to concern about economic, social, and cultural rights. Those are also included in the international covenant safeguarded by the UN. So at the second stages, as the civil society in Taiwan has progressed, and a lot of the individual organizations start to establish and focusing on particular issues, for example, women's rights, or gays and lesbians' rights, or workers' rights, for example. But TAHR, our organization, remain very much a generalist approach.
But you must have some focused area, right?
Focused area, definitely. At the second stage, like you say, if we do protest, yes, the second stages of our work is more from writing or speech to action. So we will take the issue on the streets. We will organize campaign through public protest, or through press release, or through assembly in connection or in networking with other NGOs, not only at the domestic level, but at the regional level and at the international level.
Let's talk about international networking. I know that your organization, your association, has been very active in reaching out to other human rights groups in the region and in other countries as well. What about the most of the networking you've been doing in recent years?
I can give you an idea of how many different regional or international organizations we are in association with or in collaboration with. For example, at the regional level, we are a member of an organization called Asian Forum for Human Rights and Development. It's shorthand called Forum Asia. Its secretariat is based in Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand. And it is one of the strongest regional organization in Asia, and you're focusing very much on human rights defenders, issues concerning regional security and rights-based approach and international human rights standard setting, that sort of work. And through them, we will regularly attend international meetings in relation with the UN mechanism and things of that sort. And at the international level, we are also a member of the FIDH. It has a long name. It's called International Federation of Human Rights. Its secretariat is based in Paris, France. It's probably the oldest human rights organization in the world. It was founded in 1922. its mandate is, as you can imagine, all sorts of human rights issues, because two key founders of FIDH were instrumental participants when drafting the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, which was, I think was amended. No, it was enacted in 1948.
So in addition to the improvement of human rights in Taiwan, are you also supporting human rights activities in other countries?
Yes, we do.
Any examples or cases that you can show us?
In the recent cases, for example, the support for Myanmar's democratic movement, or most people call that the Saffron Revolution, through also an international network called GPAC, GPPAC. It is also, is it a UN initiative? I suppose you can say that. It's an initiative by Kofi Annan, which is focusing on regional security. The full name of GPAC is Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. I think that is very important for us, since right now, at this moment we were speaking, there are more than 800 missiles directing at us from China. So regional stability and prevention of armed conflict is very important for us as a member of the international community. So after the a few days after the Saffron Revolution, a group of us, members of GPAC and other NGOs in Taiwan, we have issued a press release in support of the peace demonstration by the monks and other human rights activists in Myanmar. In addition to that, there are also other works that we do that support asylum seeker, maybe from China or from Tibet. These are the kind of work that we do, because earlier you asked what are our mandates. Our mandate basically consists of a few points. Number one will be assisting individual cases and assisting victims. Because even though we have a modest office and a small staff, but we have a legal assistant who will take calls or receive emails. For example, my department will receive emails from overseas or from foreigners in Taiwan, whether foreign workers or international personnel who reside here for work or whatnot, but running into a human rights violation or felt human rights issues, they would like to have consultation with the organization or some professionals. So we will also provide that. So assisting individual cases and victims, we run a mandate.
Apparently, your organization has been doing a lot of works, activities.
Yes.
But you are a very small organization, right?
Exactly. Imagine
but
that.
How can you manage to, to work so hard and try to do as many things as you can?
Well, should I say we do our best?
most of it are volunteers, right?
It's not sufficient. Well, actually, this is the beauty of democracy and civil society, because each individual staff at different NGOs, we work hand in hand and we help each other. For example, TAHR is working in close association with Judicial Reform Foundation, which I was what I have mentioned earlier, because judicial reform is very much important for us. Once you get into individual cases or work on issues, you will start to see there are a lot of structural problems that might be the result of inadequate policy, lack of policy, or bad policy. So policy campaign or monitoring is very important for us. So we work closely with Judicial Reform Foundation and other human rights organizations or focusing on humanity, like 人本教育基金会, Foundation for Human Education. And there are other organizations that are focusing on different rights that I mentioned earlier, migrant workers, or what we call foreign bride. So through collective work, I think collective work is a key word for us, because every NGO is working with limited resources and shortage of human resources or not. Another important thing for us is that maybe a lot of people have the impression that maybe for one organization to exist or to sustain itself, you need fundings. And where you get the fund, can you keep your independence to do the kind of work that you wanted to do, especially when you are monitoring government? How can you keep yourself neutral or be independent? That's the key for us. So we very clearly stated in our constitution that all the staff or board members, you shouldn't have political affiliations. Or once you decided to join a political campaign or election, then you need to resign from the board.
So you had to maintain your neutrality and
independence. That's very important. Right. In terms of funding, we also maintain very much independent. Our funding resources is mainly from individual donations and membership fees, along with sales of publications.
So you don't receive any grant from the government?
We might do joint project or commissioned on individual cases, but generally our funding is from individual donation who believe in our work and given us the trust to carry out the work. So we value that independence very much.
So we talk about the history, the mandates, and the activities of the Taiwan Association for Human Rights. So when we come back, we will talk about the human rights situation in Taiwan and what are the problems we are facing and what are the things that can be done to fix those problems. So don't go away, stay with us.